All right, this next movie, Cinderella.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.
I already got into this a little bit earlier in the show. You know, I kind of sat you guys down. I was like, all right, here's the situation. Some people observed me kind of having a moment online with this movie. Having quite a reaction.
In your feels. Yeah.
And yeah, I said that I hated this movie. I was getting like texts from loved ones like, are you okay? Like, I'm actually not joking. Like I literally like,
this is the one that did you in.
Well, because people were like, you know, what is this movie? Like, how could it have elicited the word hate from John so many times?
How can how can they mess up this recipe? It's like, you know, like messing up mashed potatoes. It's just like, it's a classic story.
It's Cinderella once again.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's one of the all-time like greatest fables ever, you know, like for a reason. Like, shouldn't be that hard to do.
Sure, and I mean, look, they're putting the writing was on the wall, we should say. I mean, there were a lot of signs that pointed us to this moment, and I know for Will, he kind of like looked at this as, and Adonis too to an extent, is like, this must be like interestingly so bad. But Will, I feel like you don't know me. I mean, after almost 5 years of doing the show, I mean, you know, for me, if something's outrageously bad, I will make that clear, right? But if I really hate something, it's because of the dullness. I mean, you were saying earlier, it's like, well, this was like kind of dull. It's like, well, yeah. That's why I hate it. That's why I was like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to be going through this anymore. I had to like literally just like sit there staring at the screen, like cycling through all my life decisions.
Yeah, I mean, but the weird thing though is that like, I think the reason why Adonis and I were excited, at least in a bad movie sort of fascination sort of way, is because describing it on paper, it does sound like this sort of like explosively bad movie. Like it just has like all the choices that it makes that are so egregiously bad. Like when I was reading David Sims reviews, just like, okay, yeah, this sounds like the sort of like movie you love to watch on bad movie night because it's going out and doing these like very wacky, poor choices for a modern day Cinderella movie. But yeah, like watching it, it feels like a watered down like Disney Channel type movie, and not in like a good way as you were suggesting with your appreciation with Afterlife of the Dead or Afterlife of the Party.
Afterlife of the Dead. That's a name. That's a redundancy.
Yeah.
I did see David Sims' one-word review, apocalyptic. And it's not that I disagree, but I think it's what you're saying. It's like, okay, yeah, it clearly is a sign of there's trouble in the waters. And I will just say, on paper, there were things about this movie as I was watching it where I was like, you know what? Yeah, Cinderella, there are things you can do to the story to freshen it up a little bit, you know, maybe put in a little bit of like, she has a different agenda for going to the ball. Let's set this thing up. Let's talk about it. Let's go in with an open mind, as open as we can make it. So this was originally going to be a Sony movie. I kind of mentioned the writing with like some of the red flags, the writing on the wall, the fact that this was Sony, it was going to be Sony theatrical, but then it was going to, straight to Amazon streaming. And a lot of us were kind of like, well, you know what? It's pandemic. That's not necessarily a sign of quality. That's like, hey, you know, like maybe they just see something in this, you know, from the marketing, from what I can tell, like I just saw posters and stuff. I was like, this kind of does look like a ABC, like one night only kind of like TV event kind of thing. So I could buy that. I could buy them being like, yeah, let's put it on Amazon. People will watch it.
I mean, at its best, it could seem like another like Brandy's Cinderella sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at its worst, it seems like it could be like Geppetto starring Drew Carey.
Well, we'll see where they landed. And they had the pedigree for this thing. I mean, this is one of those things where you're watching it and you're like, they really got people to be in this because they were expecting this to be like, I think like a holiday, Christmas time, Thanksgiving, like 4-quadrant musical hit. I mean, they were going for like Greatest Showman kind of, show-stopping quality here, at least in the pre-production. I mean, they got a director who can deliver. They got Kay Cannon, who, I've been pretty hit or miss with Kay Cannon. I mean, I think like I know her more for her writing. Her first film was Blockers,
which I liked.
Blockers did pretty well. I was one of the naysayers though. That was a big box office hit, and I was like, you know what, Blockers is cool. Hey, I gave it a pass. I was like, yeah, go check it out. You'll probably like it. R-rated comedy about how John Cena is funny as a dad.
Sure.
Funny that we brought it up last week too.
Yes.
Among other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he and his daughter in the movie, played by the wonderful Geraldine Viswanathan, to me, they're the more like memorable characters in that movie. The other ones not as much, but
Sure.
Hey,
Well, Catherine Newton. I mean, like Leslie Mann.
I kind of remember her and Leslie Mann. Ike
Sure.
Barinholtz, I think, was in it too. I don't know. They kind of like fade in the background for me a little bit compared to Cena and Vishwanathan. But
Well, I mean, I'll cut some slack. I think Kay Cannon actually did a good job with that. And I'm not the biggest Kay Cannon fan. I'm pretty on record being like, I'm not a fan of the Pitch Perfect movies. I'm not quite sure what else she's involved with, but Blockers surprised me. And
New
I felt
Girl.
New Girl, the show New Girl.
Yeah, she wrote a bunch of it. And
okay, I haven't watched enough of it to have an opinion on the show, I'll admit. But yeah, I mean, I think Blockers, it could have been really, really bad. Like, that's the type of film like you hear about on paper. I'm like, I don't know about this, but in execution, I felt it was funny, but it was also pretty sweet, and the performances were good. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe Kate Cannon has, finally figured it out, in my view. And I think that's why when they announced the Cinderella movie, it's like, I don't know. I mean, how many Cinderella movies we got? The Kenneth Branagh one just came out not too long ago, and it was actually pretty good. So it's like, do we really need a new Cinderella? And they're like, no. You don't understand. This isn't just Cinderella again. It's a modernized Cinderella.
Yeah, so we should say, so James Corden, who's in the movie, came to Columbia Pictures, I think, right? And he was like, and he produces the film with a few other people. This is back in 2019. So he's like, let's do Cinderella. We'll do a musical retelling.
Let's get loud.
Let's do something different with it. Let's girl boss this thing. Okay? Now, to me, it makes sense. Like the mathematical formula, they go to Kate Cannon, who in addition to writing episodes of New Girl, who in addition to writing Pitch Perfect and doing Blockers, she's also the creator and writer of the show Girl Boss on Netflix. Only has 6 episodes. The wonderful Britt Robertson was in the Not So Wonderful show back in 2017. It's terrible. Girl Boss. One of the worst Netflix shows of that year, if I recall.
Oh, wow.
But they bring her in and they're like, I mean, it's one of the few Netflix movies that got canceled. I mean,
Netflix shows.
Netflix shows. Thank you. But so she comes in and they're like, you know how to do this thing. You know how to sort of like reinterpret, like, sort of like do a movie for the modern woman. And a lot of people want that. They want that sort of like fresh take. Like, let's take a character like Cinderella, who in the past has just sort of been in this like very tropey zone. And I get the formula. I mean, it's Kate Cannon. She's written some very interesting, women characters and men characters, of course.
Sure.
But specific to Cinderella, like I see it. I see the math, the producers kind of like throwing dice onto the table and being like, this is going to be Snake Eyes.
Sure.
And holy cow, that did not work out as intended.
Yeah, I mean, before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to make one thing clear, which is that I'm not against the idea of like quote unquote girl bossing Cinderella. I think there's a way you can do this. I think it's a bad idea in principle, but I think there's a way you can do it that is funny and fresh. And similar to like Blockers, is just like on paper, I see that concept. I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like it could be kind of icky and like trite. And, I'm kind of wanted to be on her. I'm trying to be as nice as possible here because I think there's a version of this movie. It on principle, you can do this and make it work, but you have to have really clever writing. You have to like really be self-aware without like overdoing it and not just rely on the girl boss aspect solely. Like just the idea of like reinventing the wheel by like giving it a new fresh coat of paint. Like you kind of have to do you got to do a little bit more legwork, I think, to make that concept work. And I think the movie itself is just kind of satisfied with just doing like the baseline, just like, we acknowledge like this is something that happened in the original Cinderella, but we're not that movie. We're different. Like we're doing something a little bit winking, and that's where I think the trouble comes in with this film.
Not all those decisions, like not all those plot turns, I thought were bad. There were things in this where I was like, on paper, sure. Like specifically what they do with like the prince character and his sort of like setup. I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe the prince just sort of like, maybe he's like a prince from like Gossip Girl. Dude's got a trust fund and dude just wants to like get around. I mean, like, yeah, sure. Like do that with Cinderella. Like there's an avenue there. And I want to be super clear about something, right? Because when people hear girl boss, they define it in different ways, right?
Right.
To me, maybe we do agree on this, Will. I think it's the term that's maybe like tripping me up. There is a way to do a version of Cinderella where, look, she's just here. She just wants to start a business. She's like, she started up from nothing. Now she's here. There's a way to do that. There's a way to sort of like capture this sort of like, she has her own ambitions. She has her own goals. She has her own agency. That's not girl boss in and of itself. Girl boss is sort of like, this idea of like the woman character or any character in general, because it's something that they're kind of like grafting from like this like, you know, male character trope that's been around for too long, where, you know, it's celebrated and then it's like applauded to sort of like rise up and make tons of money and to be this sort of like super capitalist, you know, king or queen or whatever. And it's like it kind of jives with this movie's like obsession with royalty too. It kind of is like leaning into like it wants to be subversive, but like it's still like dancing around with all these really boring fairy tale sort of qualities that, yeah, it's not subversive about. And to me, it just it rings as so disingenuous. It's like if nothing else, like the whole movie is dull, and I think the message is pretty just like so misguided in terms of like what is aspirational for any of these characters. And like the aspirational is like the, you know, the character who, you know, rules over everybody gets to do it. And the only reason she couldn't do it before is because the patriarchy was holding her down. And instead of realizing that like, you know, maybe ruling over a bunch of people is not great. And you know what? It's fine. Like I don't want to make it sound like a movie's got to have like perfect values or anything to be good. But it's just like, it's so proud of itself and it's so smug that it just rubs me the wrong way. Even I could disagree with the movie's message, but like the way it comes about is the issue for me.
Yeah, so we're on the same page because that's where I'm at. It's just like, if you really want to reinvent the wheel, I guess, or like try to do a newish take on Cinderella, if you do the legwork, sure. I mean, I'm not opposed to that on principle, but the movie, like you said, it has this sort of indulgence where like, it feels like, oh, like they pat themselves on the back just for coming up with this concept. And they're just like, well, we don't need to do anything else. We're already struck gold. We just got to ride this, train to the station and just, collect our awards at the end. And it just feels like not even like to the point where they don't even really write original songs. Most of them are just, renditions of famous pop songs, which
I just assumed they were all covers because I got to the point where it's like, I might just not have ever heard of this song. It is so bad that it could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be original. I mean, there were a couple where I was like, this probably is original because I don't imagine any self-respecting musical artist would put themselves through this without a paycheck from Sony. So
the cynic in me assumes they have one original song because they want that one to get the Oscar nomination.
Yeah, there you go. That's the Greatest Showman effect.
Yes, exactly.
I imagine though, because we're railing, there's a lot of stuff to get to here. There's the Camila Cabella, there's the cast in general. There's more to say about the music, but I know I see Adonis in the corner. He's kind of hugging his signed poster of Cinderella, tears through his eyes. Yes. Just kind of like Kate Cannon's signature, anything is possible. XOXO.
Guys, I auditioned twice to be Cinderella, and
the Cinderella. All right.
I thought it's time we sort of we changed the gender norms a bit, but I guess Kate Cannon just
I would just
put
you in the Minnie Driver role, me personally.
I wanted to be I didn't want to be typecast. If I get one Minnie Driver role, I'm in Minnie Driver roles the rest of my career.
I just imagine if Pierce Brosnan as a king is going to listen to anybody, it's Adonis.
When he, okay. I'm assuming I'm gonna start talking about the movie. I'm sorry if I cry a little bit. It's a very hard thing to get through. Can I start actually with the tweet that inspired me to even watch the movie? It's by you, John. Is that okay?
I was gonna say, it's not the one where like James Corden and company stopped LA traffic to dress in costumes.
I thought I was gonna say it's from Amazon Prime. And it says "See Cinderella." Available exclusively on Amazon Prime Friday.
You could literally freeze frame that tweet video where James Corden is literally humping the air toward this pedestrian who is just not pedestrian. They're in their car. They could have run over them at any point.
I like to imagine who the people are in the car. Like somebody's like about to give birth. And they're just like, we're almost at the hospital, honey. Don't worry. We're almost there. Oh God. What's this? Is there some sort of traffic jam?
Is that Shawn Mendes' girlfriend? What?
Is that James Corden? And no, that tweet, honestly, that was typical James Corden behavior for me. I saw that and I was like, I saw his name and what was going on. I was like, that makes sense. Okay. So, no, the tweet that got me to finally check the movie out, because I had heard about it, I did a little research, but I was like, this probably isn't for me because I'm not a huge Cinderella fan. I saw the original and I saw the 2015 one. I've seen like a Cinderella story, but it's not like I was itching for a new Cinderella, you know, like, especially because before I had seen it, I thought it was just going to be the same old tired tale, and now I'm kind of wishing it was. So the tweet that finally made me want to see it, it's by John Negroni. At John Negroni says, "I hated the new Cinderella. Hated it. Imagine if the biggest fan of Glee did a Cinderella retelling. I was in already. That was it right there. And then you continued with, it's peak girl boss pandering. You followed up in a second tweet calling it, what if Cinderella, but capitalist AF queen."
They literally have a "Yes, Queen" quote in this movie. What do you want from me?
Those were terms. See, that was before I saw the movie. So those were terms I wasn't expecting to see attached to Cinderella starring Camila Cabello. It's a very hard name to say.
Camila Cabello, the wonderful Camila Cabello. I was teasing her a little bit before, but she's a treasure.
Oh yeah,
she rules.
She's great. This movie did her a complete disservice. There are a lot of shots in this movie
Her
where I
first
can
film
tell.
role, I think, right?
Oh
I don't think
yeah,
she's ever been in a film before, and some people take the cheap shot and they're like, yeah, it shows, and I'm like, you know what? Give her another project. She deserves it.
yeah. First of all, it's her first movie, and you can really tell that there were just a lot of moments where they just said action and didn't give her a lot to work with. Like it's very clear that it's not really indicative of what she can become as an actor. So I watched the movie, immediately got into the first song. Billy Porter comes on and narrates. He plays the fabulous godmother. They play Rhythm Nation, like a mix of Rhythm Nation, and it took everything in my power not to turn it off right then and there. So I was like, you know what? If I'm going to watch this, I'm going to tweet about it. And that one or two tweets ended up becoming like a whole thread where I kind of just laid into this movie. Because I agree with you, John. I also hate ×4 this movie for so many reasons. The message is so misguided to me that I'm still not sure what exactly it is they're trying to tell me. Like the Cinderella wanting to have her own business, that's fine. I think that's a really great change in character, especially because, you know, we're in this age where we're taking these role models who used to be so gung-ho about like, oh, get married young. You're basically what Idina Menzel's character is saying. You have to find a prince and you have to support your family, and this is your role. And Cinderella's like, no, I'm not about that. I want to have my own business. But she doesn't really. Her intentions are pretty misguided. Like, she says one thing and does another, and it takes almost no time for that to happen. And that happens with a lot of characters. And there are two character arcs in particular with these two just capitalist representations of this hierarchy, and it's like trying to say, yeah, they were bad people and they did bad things, but it's okay because we forgive them, and all they needed was a stern talking to. Like, that's all it takes to dismantle the patriarchy. Just tell them, hey, the patriarchy's not good. Don't do that. And then, oh, sorry, my bad. Feminism, and it's like it's so misguided and it's kind of dangerous. It's
the whole thing is
basic, yeah. And
basics, yeah.
Yeah.
Because can I give my overall? Because here's the thing: we've said it many times. We should keep stressing it. It's not like you can't have a powerful, a woman character with agency. The same reason that, like, we've gotten male characters with so much agency for so long. That the problem to me is that, like, the way the writing is so pandering to that fact, right? Instead of treating her like a human being, which is what people actually want, like, why does she want to start a business? The movie doesn't really get to that. Like, right. The whole thing of her wanting to start a business is because she wants to start a business, and the idea of owning a business as a woman is the reason any woman would want to own a bit. No, people want to own business because they want to make money. They want to take care of their family because they have life goals, they have values, they have a worldview, they're a person. And this movie is like, no, there's just the only value to, starting something, creating something is just doing it in the first place so you can make money and join the economy like the men. And it's like, that is just so no. It's just so against, I think, what real people do.
Well, it just feels like you said before, it's pandering because it feels like, in their view, like, if we just make it that Cinderella it's not only that she wants to find a prince, but she wants to be a businesswoman. They're like, that's progressive enough. Like we already got the check mark for progressive.
Exactly.
We've did it, team. And that's what feels like pandering. It's just like, yeah, like if the premise of the film isn't inherently flawed if you build beyond that. But it feels like I said before, they feel like, oh, we struck gold with this. We're going to have Cinderella want to be a businesswoman. She wears a suit at one point. The fairy godmother is actually Billy Porter. And they just feel like rubbing their hands being like, yes, we figured it out. We did it. We cracked the code.
Meanwhile, like James Corden is laughing in the corner, knowing what he's doing. The agent of chaos that he is. Like, he knows. He's just like, they're actually going to do this. He's literally writing lines into the script of like the mouse tail being a penis. Like he's doing that as a prank.
Oh,
like,
can we talk about that for a bit?
This.
Just specifically that part.
I mean, yes, because it's like that implies a sort of faulty awareness of anatomy that confounds
Thank you.
me.
Oh my gosh. I wanted to tweet about it, but I was like, I'm not giving James Corden the satisfaction of tweeting about a mouse penis. But James, did
James Corden pee out of his tail before?
Well, I don't want to talk about that.
I want to let's dive. I want to really dive into this.
I just don't understand whenever we watch these movies, we'll always like gravitates toward the plight of like one animal and they're like confused place in this world.
And Shang-Chi, I did not bring up once the little faceless
because I thought because if it was a spoiler thing, otherwise you might have.
Oh, Morse isn't a spoiler. There's merchandise everywhere.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was gonna say Morse isn't a spoiler inherently. If I said who Morris's friend was, that'd be a spoiler.
That'd be a spoiler,
yeah. Yeah.
We haven't talked enough about how the music in this, legitimately like letters of apology should be written to all the original artists, particularly every member of Queen. However, if there are trials and if there's jail time, the Queen estate, if they signed off on this, I don't blame them 100%. They probably just didn't listen to the final version, but they should have never let this happen.
I mean, I have to give them very, very small credit that at no point did they have Cinderella and the evil stepsisters get together and sing Single Ladies. That was something I was expecting all the way through, and that never happened.
They had to choose between that and like What a Man / Seven Nation Army, and clearly that mashup was way more important.
Yeah, I got some real Rock of Ages vibe from that scene, I'll admit.
Ooh,
I definitely was for the first time thinking to myself, well, maybe my undying love of Moulin Rouge was a mistake. Maybe I have enabled something
finally
here. As much as that movie is important to me, I feel like it's done more harm than good.
Yes.
Let's go there.
Yes.
Because we have this movie, and I was feeling the same thing about Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia, now there's a movie.
Here we go again.
Oh, here we go again.
Here we go again.
Those movies are what this movie, Cinderella wishes. It had an ounce of the heart, passion, and flair of the Mamma Mia movies. Hashtag ABBA is back, reunited, feels so good. That said, this movie, I knew that this movie had changed me for the worse in a permanent fashion when, we've gone through this whole thing where at no point do we really get a sense that Ella or Cinderella, because they do that whole thing, where Ella is like, I do want love too. Like I want to start a business, but I also like, I want to get hit by the Cupid's arrow. At no point though does she have any sort of like love spark. And the movie introduces the object of her would-be affection, played by Nicholas Galitzine, who is just horrendous in this movie. And I
Shawn Mendes.
Could have just been a wet blanket and would have had just the same amount of charisma as this guy has.
I do not know what happened there. Yeah, no energy. And they have like these flirty scenes. And I was like, I am surprised that she doesn't just walk away slowly from this man. It was very surprising to me. I wish that they should have gotten somebody like James A. Caster is in this movie. Funny comedian. I was thinking to myself, he should have been the prince. This sort of like awkward kind of comedian sort of character who doesn't have like the stereotypical good looks. That's like the vibe of this movie. Like let him be the prince, and then you have something a little bit more. There you have like the personality. There you have the sort of like, oh, it's real chemistry between these two. Instead, it's like they Ed Sheeran the thing. And
literally.
It's such a, and that's what I mean. Like literally two characters need to have a conversation, and the rules of musicals have survived this long for a reason. The rules of musical, like expressing what you can't say, and this movie bastardizes that with using Ed Sheeran, and I shouldn't be surprised what they do with this. What the way that they sort of like create and contrive obstacles for these characters, and then use some of the most hokey modern American pop songs to just twist that nail in our back and make us suffer. It's criminal.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a point in the movie where I almost could see the prince and Cinderella just being friends. And I was like, that'd be an interesting way to take this if you just made it so that she didn't marry the prince and instead, like, you know, they became friends and he's like, hey, I'm rich. You want to start a business? I can help you. And I almost wish they would have done that because the chemistry between these two characters is just not there at all. And
They're cousins. Like,
yeah.
He's the creepy cousin. Does my cousin have a crush on me? I kind of need to.
I mean, she has more chemistry with Billy Porter than she does with the prince.
Oh yeah,
I feel. I mean, yeah.
By the way, that there's no great song in this movie, but I will say that was the only time for that like minute and a half. That was the only time where it really felt like the actor was like happy that they were singing a song in Cinderella, and I appreciated that.
I mean, I have nothing. I mean, Billy Porter is a Pittsburgh native, and so I'm very happy for his success, and I'm excited that Billy Porter keeps being in things. And I think he's the only person in this movie that doesn't embarrass themselves.
He gave it his all. He was like, "I know what I'm in."
I think he's having fun. I think he's aware that the movie is kind of kitschy and dumb, and he's just like, "I'm just gonna make the most of it. I have like 3 scenes.
Owned it.
Let me just have fun."
Right.
Yeah.
I think what sums it up for me is like this movie mashes up 2 eras that are very embarrassing and unfortunate for the medium of music. It's the one era on one end, we have the Glee era. This, you know, once promising for a very limited amount of time era of television where you could have covers of songs, but you could find sort of like an emotional journey, you know, literally and figuratively, through these like sort of misfit characters doing something that's not typically seen as popular or you know, aspirational, but you know, it's just it's just a bunch of high school kids getting together and singing their hearts out. That was what Glee started as. What Glee became was this like corporate mishmash of just the absolute, you know, Obama era pandering to this sort of like, I don't know, just this really dull, wet blanket, I think you said, Will, of that one guy. But I think it applies here too, of just what entertainment can be. And that it shines through the music, right? And then the other end of that, they merge it with TikTok. This is the time of TikTok where people just kind of get up and they sing for a few, you know, they dance or they sing, they do something like really silly. And it's like so quick and it's so like, we have to say something edgy. We have to say something sort of, you know, just like these little bites of, you know, these little bursts of entertainment. And that's what this movie is. It's like taking the worst of both of those things and just like mushing them together. And I reject all of it.
Yeah. I mean, as I've noted before, I'm not a fan of jukebox musicals by design. So maybe I went into this film slightly biased, but I will give credit. I mean, I did like the second Mamma Mia fine. But I will give credit to both Moulin Rouge and the first Mamma Mia in that they're not my thing, but they're shameless about what they are. And it's just like Meryl Streep just like, hey, look, I've won at that point 2 Oscars. I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to be in a big, broad musical and goof it up with Pierce Brosnan. And same with, you know, Moulin Rouge. It's just like Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman. They're having fun singing songs they like. This movie, there's something so inherently cynical about every decision that they make that doesn't even seem like they're having fun making this movie. But it's like constantly like shaking you like by the shoulders and be like, have fun, we're singing, we're having fun. But it doesn't feel like anyone involved is enjoying themselves. And as you mentioned, it's a Sony production. And I kind of got the vibe throughout the film that, do you remember when the Sony emails leaked? And there was like that one email there was that one email where the one Sony executive was like, Spider-Man should listen to EDM music and like save the day using his Snapchat filter or whatever. And like, it was just like the most comically egregious, like Sony exec is out of touch with reality and the youth vibe.
Peter Parker AirPods question mark?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I got the sense that that executive, I don't know if it was a male or a woman, they were the
probably
one that
sent
was.
an email. Yep, they probably sent an email that was like, well, hold on. What if Cinderella really wanted to go to the ball so she could make connections?
Yeah.
So she could network and add people on LinkedIn.
Ed Sheeran question mark? Rat tail penis question mark question mark? But yeah, I mean, it just like Donis, you're mentioning before, I just get the sense that like it has like this sort of like split brain mentality where it's just like we want to be progressive, we don't want to just do Cinderella again, but it's also like, but we have to do this because it's Cinderella. She has to be with the prince, and it's like if they played up the idea of like they don't have chemistry because Cinderella has to realize that like, oh, I don't have to follow expectations and marry the prince. Like, we don't have anything in common. We can't relate. Like, I'm going to follow my business pursuits. Like, that's fine. You can do the idea, but don't introduce those ideas and then be like, oh, I got to be with the prince because it's Cinderella. It's just like, that's, I think, the core issue I have with this movie is that it never really makes a firm decision what it wants to be. And like you were saying, John, it just feels like it's also pandering and being smug at the same time. It just becomes a deeply cynical and very unpleasant movie experience by the end.
Hey, wait, though. One good thing came out of this movie. I think it vindicated me and it vindicated Adonis Gonzalez. You know why?
Why?
Why is that?
We both were right about Cruella. There you go.
Why is that?
Oh, just that Cruella is the good version of this movie.
They could both not be great.
Nah, that's not true. Cruella Cruella owns.
I did enjoy Cruella a lot more than I was expecting. I finally saw that it was free on Disney Plus, and I watched it and I was like, oh wow, okay. This is a pretty good movie. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. Will, I think Will didn't actually watch it, and he just sort of.
Oh, I saw it. I saw it in theaters. I'll agree that the mediocre Cruella is better than the dog shit Cinderella movie.
I think you mean the empowering, epic 2021 fan favorite Cruella is meteors, ahead of Cinderella 2021.
Light years. I will say, are we giving like final thoughts?
Yeah, we'll finish out with, you can give the last word, Adonis. Please do.
All right. Okay. I'll just say honestly, I agree with what we've been saying. There were a lot of things on paper that could have made this movie way better than it was. Absolutely terrible execution all the way around. I really don't feel like I was part of the Rhythm Nation with this one, and I'm hoping that God forbid, if there's another one of these, if they try to do it with I don't know, Snow White or something, they learn from this one. I really don't have much else to say, but besides that, I won't get too much into it, but I really hate what they did with Idina Menzel's character. A lot, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to say too much because then I'm going to get inspired to write a review, and I just don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
I'm sorry, but I have two last things. I know I said last word, but you brought up Idina Menzel. I'm starting to get sick of her singing voice. Frozen did this. I'm sorry, yeah. But they're doing it whenever she does that. Like what? No, please stop.
I feel like it tell
was
her
great and wicked.
I feel like it's in her contract that she has to do that.
Yeah, she's got to, even though they know there's not going to be a let it go in this, they're like, well, Idina, I mean, it happened once, so we got to give you at least one number, so.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that James Corden is on a warpath to be in the most embarrassing musical ever at this point.
That was the last thing I was going to say. Will,
he's really
James Corden
himself.
Is not the worst person in this movie, and he actually, dang it, he had a couple of lines that were funny.
I can't get behind you with the funny bit.
He did.
I don't know about that.
Only when he was a mouse, not when he was the human character. But okay, that's Cinderella, 113 minutes long. But what about its Rotten Tomato score? What about that? So this thing doesn't have a cinema score since it wasn't in theaters. Or I think it was in maybe some theaters,
yeah, it was
but not
in select
enough.
Theaters. Yeah.
Right. But Will, what are you gonna guess for Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm a little off my game today, so my confidence isn't quite there. But my gut says 32%.
It's a 32 from Will. What about AG?
I'm trying to factor in the people who are going to defend this movie because they're going to be there. I'm going to give it a 28%.
Well, a little closer. It's 43%.
43.
43 out of 92 reviews. And audience score, Will, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
What do you think?
Audience score, it has to be lower, right? I'm going to say 20%.
And Adonis?
That was going to be my guess as well.
75%.
There's absolutely no way.
We have crossed into another realm. And I'm scared. I'm scared of this
those
new
are
reality.
bots?
They're verified ratings, it looks like.
All right.
So
I can see that.
Whatever conspiracy, whatever helps you sleep at night.
Yes, whatever gets you through the pandemic.
I've had plenty of conversations with friends and family members where I just absolutely hated a movie, and they're like, "Yeah, but it's fun to watch with your kids," and I'm like,
"They're not really watching it. They're folding laundry. All the kids are like yelling and screaming and throwing Cheerios at the TV."
Oh,
it was fun.
prayers for all the parents dealing with the renditions of the covers in Cinderella right now.
I just imagine like a mom like with headphones in, folding a laundry, smiling. You see upstairs like kids are crying, like holding their hair, and you're like, "Why does James Corden keep talking about his tail?
What does he mean?
Mom, please."
All right, that's Cinderella. Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.